way to the mic, they start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs and the Ruben Studders. More once you discover. For all of the lovers, Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers, and Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers, and Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape. Every one of us, I was kinda late, so I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the fate, cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the rest of them.
Hey y'all, welcome to another new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. Now on this episode I give my thoughts on news and gossipish from the week, and I talk about what I loved in wrestling this week. I just had a lot to say, so of course I had to put the beef in the pot and let it cook. So I hope you enjoyed this episode full of truth bombs and fire hot takes. This is the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. Enjoy it, y'all. Alright, so in news and gossipish, there is a lot that happened and has been happening over the past couple of weeks, but I do want to address some things in this episode, hence the title, Let the Beef Cook, but that's also a reference to a line that Carmelo Hayes said this week on NXT, and I'll talk more about that later. But honestly, there was just a lot that I wanted to talk about and address. But firstly, in terms of news, I want to talk about Drew McIntyre, who is of course set to face Roman Reigns at Clash at the Castle on Saturday, September the 3rd, aka Steph Miss Eve, because that's the day before my birthday. Apparently he has been fighting through a back injury, and basically it's not rough enough for him to get surgery on, so he is still on schedule to fight Roman Reigns. So according to Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp, who knows everything and has a crystal ball in his soul, Drew McIntyre has been working through a rough back injury that caused WWE to pull him from live events this weekend, but it's not but he added that the injury is not expected to require surgery, and he's still scheduled to face Roman Reigns for the Universal title at Clash at the Castle. Now, of course, it's really important to Drew McIntyre to be there for this match, considering this is the first main roster pay-per-view event held in the UK since 2003, and because he's from Scotland, it's going to make it makes it an even bigger deal for him to be there and have that moment, in his home country. So here's hoping that Drew McIntyre can be healed enough to participate in that match, and actually represent for his home, not country, but yeah, his home country. God, I almost wanted to say continent. His home country. So yeah. Also, I thought it was funny that you really wouldn't know that he's injured, considering the way he's been taking all kinds of bumps and fighting with people left and right, especially the Usos last night on SmackDown. But either way, I hope that he has healing, in the midst of everything that's been going on. So also in the news, Kurt Angle, Hall of Famer in the WWE, doesn't think that Vince McMahon is fully retired. So of course, since Vince McMahon has resigned and retired from WWE amid internal and external investigations into NDAs, hush money, and all kinds of things involving the silencing of women that he has had affairs with or possibly sexually assaulted, There are some WWE wrestlers from the past and the present who have expressed doubts that he no longer really has that much of a hand in the company, and Kurt Angle added himself to that list. He was featured as a guest on the Cafe de Rene podcast, which is hosted by Rene Dupree, who is a French Canadian wrestler who was formerly of the group La Resistance a long time ago in the 2000s on Raw, if you remember that. That's who he is. And Kurt Angle was quoted as saying, "I personally don't think he's fully retired. You know Vince, he's going to be behind the scenes. Vince is not going to let go of that company, and he will not let it go until his hands are dead cold and they pry it out of his cold dead hands. He's not letting go of that company until he dies, and that's just it. And you know, I'm not trying to cause any problems for WWE or for Vince McMahon because I love Vince to death, but there is no way he's going to let it go. He already set up, Stephanie being in charge, and Triple H being in charge of talent relations. He's got everybody in the right positions so that he could continue to run the show." And honestly, Rene Dupree, agreed with Kurt Angle. But there's no way for anyone to really know from the outside looking in because, of course, it really seems final that he did retire and sort of take his hands off of the business because of the fact that his allegations could blow back on the company and make the company look bad. And sink the reputation of all the people who basically worked there. So he walked away from it. And then it's also easy to assume that he's no longer working there and no longer has a hand on it because of all the creative decisions that are taking place now with all the people who were let go being hired back. So yeah, even though Kurt might think that Vince might still have a hand in it because he is still very much a majority shareholder of the company, I just don't think that he's involved with it at all at this point. And it's kind of clear from the direction that talent is going and from the direction that behind the scenes are going, that from what we continuously hear, which are generally positive. So yeah, something else that was really interesting that popped up last weekend was a certain post from Wyndham Rotunda, who was formerly known as Bray Wyatt in WWE. There have been rampant rumors discussing whether or not he could return to WWE or not, considering when he did leave WWE, I believe last year or so. I believe it was last year when he left. He left due to mental health reasons, and I completely understand that because sometimes you just got to take care of yourself and not run yourself into the ground. Since then, he hasn't really wrestled anywhere. There have been rumors talking about appearances in movies, and of course him and JoJo are engaged and they've had children and stuff like that, which is great. But he's been sort of in the dark in terms of talking about where he could possibly go and where his wrestling career could go next. But he did release this one statement, which is kind of like an ode or like a love letter to pro wrestling, even though he said wrestling is not a love story. So I'm going to read it right now if you haven't. He said, "Wrestling is not a love story. It's a fairy tale for masochists. A comedy for people who criticize punchlines. A fantasy most can't understand. A spectacle no one can deny. Lines are blurred. Heroes are villains. Budgets are cut. Business is business. But it can also be a land where dead men walk, where honor makes you elite, where demons run for office, and rock bottom is a reason to rejoice. Woo! It's an escape. A reason to point the blame at anyone but yourself for 2 to 3 hours. An excuse to be a kid again, and nothing matters except the moment we are in. Wrestling is not a love story. It's much more. It's hope. And in a world surrounded in hate, greed, and violence, a world where closure may never come, we all know a place that has hot and cold hope on tap. For better or for worse." Now, when I heard this, and basically read it for myself, I internalized it as him sort of making references to all of the things about wrestling as a whole that can just be up and down and like a roller coaster and stuff like that. But in the end, it's like I said, wrestling may be a lot of things, but it's still something that you can go back to and love, regardless of all of the ways in which it sort of turns us upside down and makes us hopeful for the future, while also making us cynical at the exact same time. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and I really feel like that was a beautiful way to put it. So whatever or wherever Bray Wyatt does decide, wherever Wyndham Rotunda decides to go, I'm sure he'll make the right decision for himself, because either way, it seems that he still loves wrestling from the way that he wrote about it in this little love letter. So wishing him the best of luck in whatever it is he chooses to do. And he should really consider writing like gift cards, well, not gift cards, but like writing like greeting cards, or writing poems or something, because that was really good. I like that. Yeah, he should totally think about that, or maybe writing for comic books at some point. Like, that would be cool, because I actually liked reading what he wrote about that. That was cool. So otherwise in the news, we have the possible rumors and gossipish, I guess you could say, is this, that there's a possible WWE draft set to take place in September. So WWE talent reportedly believe that the next draft will be held following the Clash at the Castle pay-per-view, of course, on September 3rd, like I said earlier. According to Fightful Select, there are multiple SmackDown superstars scheduled to appear on the September 5th and 12th editions of Raw, and Raw superstars scheduled to be on the September 9th episode of SmackDown. And some WWE talent reportedly also said they have been told things that lead them to believe that the draft is coming after Clash at the Castle, even though it has not been confirmed. But even though, of course, there's this brand split that's supposed to be happening, Raw and SmackDown superstars still appear on different shows from time to time, especially before and after premium live events. So there's really no telling what this could mean, because, of course, once September and October rolls around, they sort of treat that as if that's sort of like a shake-up season. Not like after WrestleMania, but it's sort of like a second shake-up season where they sort of be like, okay, since this is what's happening, we're gonna shake some stuff up and put superstars here, put superstars there, and just see how everything goes. And I wouldn't necessarily mind it, but considering the landscape of WWE is being shaken up anyway as we speak with the change in leadership, I'm not necessarily sure a draft is really where you want to go. But then at the same time, if that's what they want to do, then fine. But I almost feel like a draft isn't necessary at this point, considering there have been so many people to make their debuts on Raw and SmackDown already. So I don't know. A draft right now, towards September doesn't feel like the best thing. I don't know. Maybe for me, I would feel like if I was going to do a draft, I'd put it like maybe towards October. But not in September, where we're still sort of wrapping our minds around this new leadership and the fact that they're bringing back all these other people. So I don't know, but I guess you just have to wait and see. Also in the news, we have Top Dollar of Hit Row, Lord Jesus, that he talked about, you know, how the WWE return of Hit Row came about. Now, this was from Fightful Select. This is an interview that he did. Well, no, it was an interview he did with Busted Open Radio, and he explained how their return came about. He said, quote, "Even when Hunter was not in NXT, this Triple H, even when we went up to SmackDown and even when we got released, I never stopped talking to Hunter. We had talked a lot already about hopefully working together in the future. I sent him clips of the stuff we were doing. I sent him clips from GCW, ACW, and Trinidad, and clips of me and Ashanti the Adonis working together as a tag team, letting him know the band was still together. Swerve being added to Hit Row was a Triple H call. Hunter added Swerve to Hit Row because he already saw he had already saw what we had been doing for a year and was like, this is a good opportunity to debut a faction instead of a tag team with a manager. It was cool. It was a good idea. It clearly worked. But Hunter saw it when it was just the three of us. He knew what we were capable of from the jump. And he also continued explaining when Triple H called to gouge interest in a return. He's quoted as saying, when he gets the reins and is like, I want to bring my guys back, we were one of his top priorities to get back because he knew what we could bring to the table. About a week and a half ago, he hit me up and was like, how are the rest of the guys? We're good. None of us wasted time this whole time. I was on tour. I did shows in New Orleans and LA for music, wrestled at GCW, MCW, ACW. B-Fab lives in Colombia, so she was doing her thing down there, modeling. Ashanti was doing acting stuff in Atlanta and LA, model stuff. We never stopped training and being ready. He was like, how fast can I act and get you guys here? This was on Wednesday of last week. If you really want us, we can be there tomorrow. We ended up having a Zoom call with him, the three of us, and planned out what would happen the next couple of days. This week, we got physicals and contracts. I don't know how the story broke that I was going to be there, but I knew it wasn't somebody with all the information because they didn't know B-Fab was going to be there, which we played into. When me and Ashanti came through the curtain, you thought it was just going to be us, and we had B-Fab come through last. Yeah, she's here too. She's an important part of the group. And then he also continued by saying, it was a really cool process because Hunter... there are a million people Hunter could run back. The list is hundreds of people long, and are talented performers that were released in the last 5 years that are still young and able to do these things. A million people he could bring back, but he called us. That made me feel not just special, but grateful. That's why I will sing his praises to the high heavens. Everyone in the world thinks they know who I am. Everyone in the world thinks I'm hard to work with. People who never worked with me had one conversation with me and felt they could talk down to me like I'm not a 30-year-old man. I told them about themselves, and then they get in their buddies' ears like I'm hard to work with. In actuality, I'm not hard to work with. I'm hard to fool. You can't tell me something you're not going to stand on. That's how I was raised. So basically, throughout this entire conversation, he was talking about how there were just no hard feelings between him and Triple H when they all got let go, and how he watched SummerSlam and how it reinvigorated him and everything. So from the looks of it, Triple H basically was watching them and keeping in contact with everything they were doing, just so, in the off chance that he did get the power and the reins creatively, that he would bring them back. And baby, they came back in high form, because clearly he said in that statement they were still in training, they were still wrestling as the hit makers. B-Fab was still doing her modeling thing in Colombia and all of the above. Ashanti the Adonis was still wrestling and doing modeling stuff. They were still in the public eye, even in the midst of them being let go. And it is so good that Triple H was able to still bring them back, even though he could have brought anybody back. And I am so glad to see Hit Row in this iteration as the OG 3 members, because it was them 3 at first, and he knew that, but then he added Swerve to it. And Swerve Strickland wasn't a bad part of it. He was cool. He was a cool part of Hit Row as well. But it was also pretty clear that he was really proud of them, because on Twitter, he posted a gif of Snoop Dogg nodding his head in approval. So he is definitely happy for Hit Row. So he's not, punching the air or crying like everybody was making it seem like he was doing. I mean, what's the point of him doing that, considering he just became AEW World Tag Team Champions with Keith Lee? Like, he's doing fine, and I'm more than sure that he loves them and that he wants the best for them. So I'm just glad Hit Row is back, and I'm just glad that Triple H is making these changes, because it's reinvigorating, the main roster for sure, and I'm really happy this is happening. Now, I want to get to 2 things that I want to address on a very serious note that happened this week in wrestling. Amari Miller, who I believe is from Missouri, who is fairly new to the NXT 2.0 roster. We haven't really seen much of her because I believe she got injured, or she was backstage, like in little backstage segments or whatever. She got ran off of Twitter this week because she thought it would be a good idea to talk about making history in terms of being a black female wrestler in NXT. She said, and I quote, "Shout out to Ember Moon being the first and only African American NXT Women's Champion. NXT goal, let's make it too." And before she deleted it, and I believe a lot of people corrected her, she doubled down on it and said, "No thanks, Sasha is German and black. I said African American." And sweetie, when you say anything weird or mean or cross towards Sasha Banks, the Sasha Hive, if you really call them that, if you can call them that, because they're like the Beehive, except it's for Sasha Banks, they will come for your head. And honestly, it was so bad that everybody corrected her, and everybody, was basically saying like, "Girl, this is not the hot take that you want to make," talking about how they actually need social media training at the Performance Center and all of the above. She deleted those tweets and she got ran off of Twitter, and then she came back, I believe maybe hours later after, and apologized for what she said. And it's funny because this brings up a conversation of blackness, because I can't tell you, I believe it was a few years ago where NXT released this picture of all of these women, who are in NXT and of African descent or are of mixed race, but still have, African heritage within them. And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, this person isn't black, this person isn't black," or like say Mia Yim isn't black, or like Simone Johnson, the daughter of The Rock, and Daniel Garcia isn't black because she's mixed with all this stuff. And it bothers me because just because a person is mixed does not absolve them of their African heritage. And I think it's ignorant to do or think that at all. We should not be gatekeeping blackness because of any reason whatsoever. You are black if you're from the hood. You're black if you're from the suburbs. You're black if you are from the city. You're black if you're from the country. And just like I'm an African American because I have two African American parents, you can still be black and still have a white parent or a black parent. And that's the truth. Sasha Banks is mixed because her mother is white, yeah, and her dad was black. Her dad has passed on, but literally, both of them, are of different races, but that does not make Sasha Banks any less black. And I hate that mindset is there. We shouldn't be gatekeeping blackness. And the truth of the matter is, and the fact of the matter is, Sasha Banks is the first African American, because she is American, because she was born here in the United States. She is the first African American NXT Women's Champion. Not Ember Moon. Sasha Banks is. Ember Moon is number 2. So honestly, that really should not have been said. And if you are going to say anything like that, fact check. But even though there have been a couple of, I'm more than sure all of us have typed something or said something online that wasn't exactly the most correct thing or the most kosher thing to say. But at the same time, when it comes to a black person's heritage, you're black regardless. Down here in the South, I've heard this all my life. There's the one drop rule. If you have any shred of blackness in you, you're black. But honestly, all of your heritage makes up who you are. Just like Mia Yim, she's mixed, she's black and she's Asian, but that does not take away her black side or her black heritage. She is still a black woman. She still can identify as that. Just like Simone Johnson can still very much identify with her black side. She is black and Samoan. So none of that melts away just because you're mixed with something. You're still black. Blackness should not be gatekept by us. It makes no sense for the people, for black people who have been excluded and treated like crap because we're different for so long, for us to do it to ourselves. It literally makes no sense. So here's hoping that Amari Miller has learned from her mistakes, and hopefully one day she will be an NXT Women's Champion someday. But hopefully she's learned from this and understands that blackness is not a monolith. It just isn't. And that's all I have to say about that. And something else serious that I do want to address is a statement that was made by Billy Corgan on an episode on basically a Fightful podcast, where he talked about the possibility of an Empowerr 2 taking place and why it might be impossible for it to happen, because he might not want to work with someone who is very higher up in a specific company, like, I don't know, AEW, and might be by the name of, Tony Khan. So Billy Corgan, in an interview with Fightful, spoke about the event and how it was having a working relationship with multiple companies, and why we won't likely see another pay-per-view like Empowerr anytime soon. So Empowerr took place a year ago this week. A year ago this week, I think. And this was an all-female pay-per-view held by NWA, and it was executive produced by Mickie James. And I was there, and I was a part of the media there. And it was one of the most beautiful, experiences I've ever had as a wrestling fan, and also as a wrestling professional, continuing to grow, in my craft and everything. And I was able to do work with Women's Wrestling Talk there with TK Trinidad, Emily May, Ella J, and Samira Kyrie, and so many different people I got to meet and interview as well. So this was a beautiful event, and of course it featured talent from AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor, and so much more. But Billy Corgan is saying that even though he loves the idea of Empowerr, he said, unfortunately, not everybody loved it as much. I get it. It's a business always about leverage, whether it's a talent, whether it's a company, and people like to throw their elbows around depending on what's happening. That's totally fine. That part doesn't bother me. I just am not in the position of going and begging, and certainly there have been times in the past couple of years where people put me in a position of begging. And then he went on to talk about how he doesn't like to throw his weight around when it comes to partnerships. I'm going to try and say this without sounding like I'm cutting a promo, but when I'm the most famous person in the room, it's a little funny that I'm supposed to grovel. I don't think like that, because I'm not a person who throws my weight around. I don't necessarily need people to throw their weight around with me. I like to think of us as partners in a particular moment until we find good partnership. So when I feel that people have been good partners, like Scott D'Amore, who is president, I believe, of Impact Wrestling, who's been a good partner recently, I love it. I'm more than happy to bend over backwards to try and get Scott what he would need from our end of the street, and hopefully he can do the same. Unfortunately, that has not always been the case with everybody, and that's totally fine. Again, I don't have a problem with adversity, but it does get a little weird sometimes when it's this who's got the bigger dog on the block mentality. Now, finding this out upsets me, because also in this interview, I had a clip. He said that having an Empowerr 2 would be impossible because there aren't enough women's talent. And that is where the first instance where I realized that's a lie. There are too many women out here in wrestling who could very well participate in an Empowerr 2 if you made that show. There are too many women. There are so many women, not even just in WWE, who I think would love to participate in it, but couldn't necessarily do it because of contract stuff. I'm more than sure with Impact and even with AEW and Ring of Honor, even though AEW technically owns Ring of Honor now, there is just too much female talent for you to make that excuse. There's too many female talents out here for you to make this excuse. And even the unsigned women, they would, I'm more than sure, love to participate in an event like Empowerr 2. So that's one excuse that I feel like is a lie. That is a bold-faced lie. Number 2, I feel like my other big issue with this is the fact that it sounds like another instance where Tony Khan and Billy Corgan both are blocking their ability, blocking the progress of women's wrestling, all because they want to both have all this big boy on campus type of energy. And it's just like, at what point is women's wrestling going to, prevail as a priority over your bruised egos? Like, at what point is that going to be a priority over your bruised egos? That irritates me, because the person he's talking about, I'm more than sure, since I've said this, it's Tony Khan. This is the same guy who got snippy with Ella Jane when asking about an all-female show. And it's clearly because him and Billy Corgan had some issues, because of the fact that I heard that Tony Khan was the one who liked to brag about the idea that he gave some of his women's talent to participate in Empowerr, and was talking about how nobody was giving him credit for it. So this doesn't surprise me at all, and it upsets me, because women's wrestling matters to a point that it deserves to be held in high esteem and crafted and creatively produced by people who actually give a crap about women's wrestling. And it's blatantly clear that Tony Khan doesn't. It is amazingly clear that he doesn't, because even on his shows, he will have women's matches last less than 3 to 5 minutes, but then have all kinds of other segments go over that. And it is just blatantly obvious that the audience that you are catering to only sees women as aesthetically pleasing and as assets to stare at, as opposed of actual athletes that deserve to be taken seriously on the level of men. And that upsets me, because events like Empowerr and events like Evolution really makes women feel seen. Do you guys not understand that women are also just as bigger fans, if not bigger fans, than the men are? I can't tell you how many conversations I have had with men that I are either friends with or have dated in the past, who are super fascinated, especially with the guy that I'm with now, who are super fascinated with the fact that I know so much about wrestling, even more than they do. I am not interested in wrestling just because a man, or just because my boyfriend was into it. No, I got introduced to wrestling through my father, but he never made me feel like I was less than, or made it seem like, oh, well, this isn't for girls, get out, or something like that. Like, no, I'm interested in wrestling from a perspective of, oh, well, this is interesting and I want to see why these men are fighting. Now, mind you, the older I got and the more, of course, I grew to realize that I was attracted to men, and women to a certain extent, I would look at them, and see their bodies as hot or whatever, but that wasn't my main reasoning behind watching wrestling. It wasn't because, I was watching it with this person and I didn't have a choice. No, I chose to sit there with my father and watch wrestling, just like I chose to do it for years and consistently do it now. And I say all that to say that you not catering to the female audience is a mistake. It is a huge mistake, because we're here too. We're buying your merchandise. We're buying your action figures. We're buying your t-shirts. I am more than sure that it's not that many men buying the Acknowledge Your Daddy t-shirts from Roman Reigns. It's us. It's us women that's buying that, because I'm more than sure it is. And I'm also more than sure that there are people of the LGBTQIA plus community who are buying those shirts too. You have to learn how to cater to people you need to learn how to cater to people who don't just have penises. You need to cater to people who have vajayjays too. We're here too. How come we can't have an all-female event? How come we can't have Evolution or Empowerr anymore? It's stupid, because us women give you so much, and also the women's athletes give wrestling so much. And as far as I'm concerned, and I'm going to keep saying this until I'm blue in the face, the business of wrestling owes women everything. And of course, there are all female shows that you can watch. There's Women's Wrestling Army, which was started by Maria Kanellis Bennett. There's Black Girl Magic, which is next week, and that was created by Hearts from Talk of Champions, and also by Spice Spiegel. They created that show. You also have Wow Superheroes, that's being executive produced by AJ Lee, and I do believe Jeannie Buss, who is a part owner of the LA Lakers. And you also have shows like Shimmer in Japan, and then you also have the Belladonna division, which I work for, which is an all-female show. There is all-female content out there, but the fact that these main companies, mind you, Impact did have Knockouts Knockdown last year, but the fact that these big companies like NWA and like freaking WWE and AEW have not had another all-female show in years because they can't get past their own stupid egos is a detriment, and it's ugly and it's stupid, and they need to catch up before they get left behind. Us women are here. Cater to us. We want to see ourselves reflected in the product. It's not just about the men. We make it up too. Give us an Evolution too. Give us an Empowerr too. The talent is out there. There is no excuse. None at all. Y'all just don't want to do it. Y'all just don't want to prioritize women's wrestling. That's y'all problem. Y'all want to keep catering to the audience members who don't care to watch women's wrestling outside of them, looking good, and outside of them, getting in a circle and possibly, jacking off to the women. That's those are the people that you want to cater to, as opposed to catering to people like me who want to see more matches like Sasha and Bailey, or more matches like freaking anybody, like, oh my god, like more matches like Becky and Charlotte did at Evolution, or more matches like between just anybody, Mickie James or Kiera Hogan. Like, I want to see stuff like that, but you're not giving it to us. You're not giving it to me, and then it's frustrating as F. So in the meantime, I hope somehow or another they can get past their egos and actually let us have all female content. Because if you don't begin to cater to your female audience, then you're just losing out. And you're choosing to go by this archaic, age-old expression of thinking that women don't watch sports. And that is not true. We watch sports too. We watch sports too. And we watch wrestling too. Cater to us. There are little girls who want to grow up and be wrestlers, but they're never going to feel that they want to grow up and be wrestlers if they don't see anything that caters to them. Give the women something. Give us opportunity. Give us something. The world does not revolve around people with penises. It just doesn't. And that's all I have to say about that. That's it for news and gossipish. And now I'm going to go into what I liked in wrestling this week. All right. So now we're going to transition into what I liked in wrestling this week. Now, of course, if you see me sharing clips of anything that I liked in wrestling this week, tell me what you liked. Tell me if you agreed with it on Instagram and on Twitter at Hardy Wrestling Podcast, or on at Hardy Wrestle Pod. So, of course, in wrestling this week on Monday Night Raw, I like the fact that on Raw and on SmackDown, the women, and actually on NXT too, the women opened up the shows. Like, I love that under this new regime, the women are being more prioritized. There have been other moments, of course, before this, where the women did open up the show, but I hope that this is something that happens a whole lot more. I enjoyed it. I loved that Team Control with Bailey, Io Sky, and Dakota Kai. They all came out and was talking, their ish and all of the above. But then Team EST Goddesses came out and they basically stepped up to them three. And I love how Bianca said, you guys feel like taking control, but me, I feel like losing it. And then she basically punched Bayley in the face, and they started to fighting and brawling and everything. And I was just like, I love this chaos. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because sometimes in life you do gotta lose control a bit. And I appreciate that Bianca embodied that Monday night. I appreciate that. Because sometimes you just gotta let go. You just gotta let go. And she let go. And I appreciate that. Something else that I also liked on Raw was just the fact that Angelo Dawkins really showed his behind in his match against Seth Rollins, because of course the Street Profits have been beefing with Seth Rollins ever since they sort of lost their place against the Usos in the tag team title picture. So they've been beefing with Seth Rollins. Seth beat Montez, and then but of course it was a hard fought victory. But even this match was a hard fought victory, and it's like slowly but surely Angelo Dawkins is trying to show us that he isn't here for play either, because a lot of people speak Montez's name when it comes to who will go solo first, but Angelo is here to let y'all know that y'all ain't finna Marty Jannetty me. Y'all are not gonna underestimate me, just because I'm the big guy and I don't have all the charisma and the body build that Montez Ford has. And he really proved it on Monday night. He did a fantastic job. And there was even that part that I really loved, where he tackled Seth across the commentary desk while Montez was distracting him outside the ring. Like, it was one of the funniest clips this year. And I was just like, dang. It's like he looked, and then by the time Seth looked, it was too late. He got tackled. And I was just like, you know what, Angelo? That's the spirit. Tackle your enemies. Tackle them. But yeah, even though Seth wound up winning, Angelo did a fabulous job. So yeah. Something else I liked in wrestling this week that made me a little bit curious was the fact that Kevin Owens and of course Ezekiel fought each other, one-on-one. But the match didn't last long because Kevin Owens powerbombed Ezekiel outside of the ring against the ring apron to the point to where he had to be carried out. And in a promo backstage, he was basically talking about how Raw will always be the Kevin Owens show, and he sounded way more serious than he has been over the past few years. Like, he sounded like that old Kevin Owens that would just destroy you and ask questions later. And him powerbombing Ezekiel reminded me of that time he powerbombed Sami Zayn after he won the NXT championship a long time ago in Black and Gold NXT. On the WWE network before they were on television. That's what that reminded me of. He literally stabbed his best friend in the back because he wanted to be NXT champion instead of Sami Zayn. And I was just like, dang, this is what I feel like, that's the intensity that this Kevin Owens reminded me of against Ezekiel. So yeah, I thought that was cool. And then I also like the fact that Dominic Mysterio isn't trusting Edge after Edge accidentally speared him while fighting the Judgment Day. And Ray was telling him to calm down. He was like, I've trusted Edge for over 22 years. And Dominic retorted by saying, and you've known me for 25 years. I'm your son. I don't trust Edge right now. And so he walked away from him. And when Rey Mysterio had his match against, I believe, Finn Balor, was it? He had Edge in his corner, but he was trusting that Dominic was going to come and be in his corner. Dominic didn't come, but later on it showed that he got attacked by Rhea Ripley, because apparently Rhea Ripley likes to attack people's kids now. That's something she likes to do now. So she dragged him out there and was laughing dastardly like she does. And yeah, but I feel like a lot of people are under the assumption that they feel like this might be a creative way that they're having Dominic turn on Ray. Or it just could be, him just being, angry about things, and then he wound up getting attacked by Rhea. Because I just can't imagine him being dastardly or angry enough to turn on his daddy. Like, that would break my heart. But, we just gotta wait and see. But I do like the edge that Dominic showed that he could have. He was like, look, bro, like, you're my dad, and you trust Edge over me? Like, I don't like that, but I like that. I also love how they basically started the women's tag team championship tournament. Of course, Dana Brooke didn't last as long, but at the same time, I'm happy that the tournament is utilizing all the women that they do have. Even though they've never really been teams before, they're still utilizing the women who probably normally would have been working in catering or eating in catering at that point, or just not doing anything. So I do appreciate that component of it, and I can't wait to see what else happens. I know Dakota Kai and Io Sky are moving forward in the tournament, so that's cool. And it makes sense given their strong standing since they came back at SummerSlam. So I'm really excited about that. Then we had Ciampa paying tribute to Harley Race, as he was looking to defeat Bobby Lashley for the United States Championship. Of course, which they're putting more respect on now under Triple H's new creative regime. And I love how he had on Harley Race's robe. Like, that was cool because I did not know that Ciampa was trained by Harley Race. And, you have to be really tough to come through his school. So much respect and love to Harley Race's family. Rest in peace to him. And you trained a really good wrestler in Tommaso Ciampa. Sadly, Ciampa didn't win, but his career on the main roster is just starting, so it's not the worst thing in the world that he didn't win. So yeah, but I do feel weird about him being the Miz's lackey though, because it's like I watched him in NXT. I know everybody doesn't watch NXT, and I completely understand that, but it's just like, from my perspective of seeing him in all the clinics that he put on in NXT, it's just kind of like, why are you a lackey? Like, you could be a solo star or something like that. Like, stop it. But, we just gotta wait and see. And I also loved on Raw, this is the last thing I love from Monday Night Raw, the car accident Easter eggs, which basically led up to the reveal of Dexter Lumis being arrested in the crowd after the AJ Styles Miz match. Like, what? Dexter Lumis is on Raw now? That blew my mind because, of course, here again, he was one of those people that got let go. And he was on the independents, under his new name. So I'm thinking, okay, well, no more Dexter Lumis, no more Index, no more none of that. But as it turns out, he done popped right back up. And now he is on the main roster on Raw. And I was so happy to see him. I was like, Dexter, thank God. And now you got all these people, including Indy Hartwell, sort of pushing the idea of him and her getting back together, or like, just any of the old stuff that they basically had for him. They kind of want to bring that back or run that back, and I can't blame them, but I just don't know how that's gonna work considering Indy's on NXT and Dexter Lumis is on Raw. I don't know, but either way, it was cool to see him. So yeah, that's everything I liked from Raw. Now, I need to talk about what I liked from AEW this week. And now on Rampage, I love Bryan Danielson's promo with Daniel Garcia before their 2 out of 3 Falls match next Wednesday. I felt a lot of passion from Bryan Danielson that I hadn't really felt from him, in a minute. Of course, he had been in and out due to, various injuries and stuff like that. But it's clear that he is back. But at the same time, I have on good authority from my friend Drian Santana, who's the editor-in-chief of Women's Wrestling Talk. She told me that Daniel Garcia basically beat him up unconscious. So that's not somebody that she wants to see him fight anymore. But at the same time, I was just like, okay, well, I'm ready to see more of what this fight has to offer, because Bryan Danielson got in Daniel Garcia's face and basically said, like, if you want to step into the ring with me, I need to see the young 21-year-old you who fought in a 60-minute match, in the independents. Like, that's what I need to see, and not this dude who, believes this sports entertainment crap that Jericho is feeding you all the time in the Jericho Appreciation Society. because in that society, he keeps talking about being the greatest sports entertainer of all time or whatever. But that is something that has triggered Bryan Danielson for years. Even in WWE, he never liked anybody saying sports entertainment to him because he classifies himself as a wrestler, baby. So if you call him a sports entertainer, he doesn't like it. And that really triggered him in that promo. But I loved it, and I actually want to watch this match. So it's going to be great. And I also like the match between Jade Cargill and Madison Rayne for the TBS title. Now, it was clear that maybe that Jade was going to win, but it was still cool to see Madison Rayne, you know, try to give her the very best that she could, considering Madison Rayne is a veteran and has, you know, years of experience over Jade Cargill. But the match was great and I enjoyed it. But of course Jade is still undefeated. But then I also love that she got attacked by Athena, who was who disguised herself as a baddie. But honestly, it feels weird to say she disguised herself as a baddie because Athena is gorgeous. Like, even though she's, you know, more so of a rough and tumble wrestler who doesn't really go full off into looks like that or whatever, she's gorgeous. She's really gorgeous, and she's a thick black woman, and we need to give her props for being a beautiful woman as well, as a tough athlete. So I thought it was kind of easy for her to sort of disguise herself as a baddie, but she attacked Jade and made her intentions known that she wants to challenge for the TBS title, and she might be able to break that record. I don't know, we just gotta wait and see. And then also, lastly, for AEW, I like that the Concrete Rose Sunny Kiss was on Rampage and was on AEW television. And even though she lost the match against Parker Boudreaux, she popped back up towards the end to join the Trustbusters. And I guess a heel Sunny Kiss might be really interesting, but I feel like as long as we see more of her on our television with her beautiful melanated self, then that's all that matters, because she's a pillar of AEW and I would love to see more of her. And I feel sad that we saw less of her during Pride Month, and you know, and it seems like she's been on AEW Dark and Dark Elevation forever, but yet, you know, you have all these other people who get more time on television, on the television shows, and they just came in as opposed to being a pillar. So yeah, I just need more Sunny Kiss on my television. That's all. And I hope she does an entrance, even though she is a heel, because that entrance is fire. And also, they should just fork over the money to Beyonce and let her do an entrance to America Is a Problem by Beyonce. If you've listened to Act 1 Renaissance, you know what I mean. It's a gorgeous album. Listen to it. But either way, that's what I liked from AEW this week. Now from NXT 2.0, I love the rounds match between Wesley and Trick Williams. I loved how Trick Williams looked in his shorts and his long boots, because it's like he sort of thinks he's the second coming of Muhammad Ali, and it's funny. And, you know, it's also a little bit delusional. But at the same time, he looks so good in those shorts. I was just like, bro, like, why are you so fine? Trick Williams, why are you so fine? It's like him and Carmelo Hayes are like the tag team of sexiness. And it just makes no sense. But the rounds match was something different, and I did enjoy that. And I love that Wesley finally has a victory over Trick Williams, because Trick Williams always stayed, you know, cheating or whatever. And it be getting on my nerves. So I was just glad to finally see him win, even though Carmelo Hayes had on a t-shirt that had Wesley crying on the front of it. I was like, that is disrespectful. But I'm glad that Wesley finally won. And Carmelo wanted to celebrate with a party or whatever if Trick won, but that didn't happen. And he wound up getting confronted by Giovanni Vinci, who disguised himself under Nathan Frazier's music, and he said that he wants to be next in line to challenge for the NXT North American title. And this is where the promo just got popping, where Carmelo said probably one of the coolest lines I've ever heard in a wrestling promo. He said, look, we can put it in the pot and let the beef cook. I'll put you on a t-shirt and it won't be designer. And I'm just like, where does this man get these promo skills from? where? He oozes charisma. He has all this swag. He's sexy as F. And he just be dropping bars in his promos. Like, why? Like, how? He's so perfect. I don't understand. And then, of course, they went to brawling or whatever. And I think they're fighting Tuesday at NXT Heatwave for the title. But Carmelo is just, he just doesn't miss. Like, he just doesn't miss at all. And I just love him. Also in NXT, I love the fact that Ariana Grace has so much dedication to her beauty pageant character, to the point to where she got hit in the eye, I guess, by a football that Thea Hale failed to catch, on the quad at Chase University. And she wanted to fight in a match against Thea Hale, and Andre Chase made it official to sort of test Thea Hale's abilities. And Thea did a really good job in the match, but Ariana Grace, I feel like, did even more, like, she did even greater in the match as well. And I just love her dedication to that character. And she's definitely a statuesque woman. Kind of puts you in the mind of a really tall woman, with all of her goodies and stuff, like Megan Thee Stallion, but, not a stallion. She's Ariana Grace. So, yeah, it's just really cute. I think Ariana Grace will go far, but then again, so will Thea Hale. And Thea was also in another match on NXT UK, and she did good there as well, but she wound up losing to, I believe, Eliza Alexander. But either way, Thea Hale has a lot to prove, and she's young, so she still has time. So, and I love her gear. It's really cute. I also love that Wendy Chu attacked Tiffany Stratton even after a long day of shopping, and her looking cute in her outfit or whatever, looking like the second coming of Regina George. But if you love Mean Girls, but she went in the locker room to relax, and then Wendy Chu turned off the lights and attacked her from behind and basically challenged her to another match. And I can't wait for this to happen, because I just get tired of Tiffany Stratton just treating Wendy Chu like she's a loser, or like she's gross or something, or like she's better than her just because of her pedigree. Okay, girl, Tiffany, you're great or whatever, but Wendy Chu is great too. Don't make Wendy Chu go back to her Tian Shaw phase and F you up. Stop it. Like, stop bullying her. And lastly, from NXT, I love that Cora Jade had a pretty good match and has a new theme song against Zoe Stark, who is the number one contender for the NXT women's title that's being held by Mandy Rose. And even as she was trying to reach for the weapon to try to take out Zoe Stark, the weapon got taken away by Roxanne, and Roxanne tried to attack her with it, but then Cora just kept running away. And I'm just like, Cora, how you gonna talk all this big stuff and then you gonna go bad and everything, but every time Roxanne pops up on you, you want to run away? Cora is just, she's such a rat. Like, she's just a rat. It's just like, girl, like, but you keep running away. It's just like, you talk all this cash-ish, but then when it's time to fight, you can't back it up. Like, I'm so sick of you. And I just cannot wait until Roxanne gets her hands on her at Heatwave, or even after Heatwave. Even if they don't fight at Heatwave, I just can't wait till the day it actually happens. So that's everything I like from NXT. Now, when it comes to SmackDown, they were on the struggle bus because in certain markets on Fox, they were showing preseason football, and at that, they were showing a game between the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions, and I don't care about that. I want to watch wrestling, and I had to wait till 11 p.m. to watch wrestling, because even after the football games went off, we had the 10 o'clock news, and then after the 10 o'clock news went off, they were showing an episode of TMZ, and then we had to wait for SmackDown. And I'm just like, oh my god, come on. I hope when stuff like that happens, they'll put SmackDown on FS1, because waiting that long to watch SmackDown was just a little bit much for me. But either way, I watched Rampage and then I watched SmackDown. So I love the fact that Hit Row is back. I'm so happy that Hit Row is returned. I talked about that in News and Gossipish, but I just love the fact that they're back. And I have a weird ungodly crush on B-Fab. She's so fabulous to me. No pun intended. She's amazing to me, and just the fact that she can, pull off those really long boots and just stand in them and make them look like the hottest thing on the planet is just amazing. And then I love Top Dollar. And I just love the fact that he basically carried both members of that jobber tag team, on his back, on his shoulders, and on his, and in his arms, and he slammed them both. It said, "Who hotter than Top Dollar? Not nada." And I'm just so glad they're back. There's justice in the world. And I also love the joy that it gave the black members of the audience in North Carolina. Like, I just love the joy that a lot of black men were just like, yeah, they're back, and they were dancing and going crazy for them. Like, I just love it. I love that. Like, Hit Row, I'm so happy you've returned. And then the fact that y'all returned on all blue, on the blue brand, was just like, oh, I love it. Love it, love it. I also love how Ronda Rousey came back before the contract signing involving Liv Morgan and Shayna Baszler. I love how she basically said, if you're the baddest, you can pay for it. And she basically slapped all that money on the table before security escorted her out. When you got money like that, you could just toss it on the table and just be like, look, man, like this fine is nothing to me. Like, I am UFC and WWE rich. Like, and farm rich. What makes you think that I can't have this money? And then her husband is a fighter too. Like, we are double caked up with money. Like, you ain't finna do this to us. You ain't finna do this to us. Shout out to Teddy Ray, rest in peace. You're just not gonna do that to us. We have money, and I'm gonna pay it cold hard cash. And I also love how Shayna Baszler was like, look, I'm gonna tear your arm apart, and you're not just gonna get past me. But then Liv called her a Ronda Rousey knockoff, and I'm like, no, she's not a knockoff. She was wrestling before Ronda Rousey was, and it's not their fault that they're trained in the MMA type of fighting, and you're just, winning and escaping and winning that title by the skin of your teeth. Stop it, Liv. I hate that they had Liv win that way, and now she's not standing in the fact that she won in a weird way. It's just weird, and this is not how I wanted her title reign to go. I wanted to like Liv being champion and root for her as the miracle kid and the underdog girl. But considering she won against Ronda Rousey the way she did, and she's saying how much she loves the title and how she'll do anything to keep it, I mean, I guess they're leaning into that as her character trait. It's the fact that she'll go crazy and do anything to keep it. But at the same time, it's not as believable that you would go up against someone like Shayna Baszler or like Ronda Rousey who could easily destroy you. It just makes no sense. But here we are. And then the last thing I love from SmackDown is just the prestige that they're giving back to the IC and by extension the United States title, with their vignettes and talking about the history of the titles. And this is something that I addressed on the Women's Wrestling Talk SmackDown and Rampage after show with Drian Santana. I said, whenever I would watch old clips with my father involving the IC title, he told me, like, if you won the Intercontinental title, you were literally positioned as next in line for the heavyweight title or for the WWE championship or something like that. And I was just like, really? He was like, yeah. And I was like, it's definitely not that way now. And it hasn't been that way for a long time, except I guess you could say maybe in the case of Big E, because when he won the IC title, they really were treating him like he was next in line. And lo and behold, he won Money in the Bank, and then he was next in line, he cashed in and he won it. But it was just a little bit different, with him, but at the same time, they don't treat it with the same prestige. They kind of treat it as a consolation prize. That and the U.S. title, they were treating it as a consolation prize for you to have a title, even though you're not, going for the big one. And I think it's about time that changed. And I'm glad that they're doing more of that, because really, when was the last time you saw the Intercontinental title main event of SmackDown? I'll wait. I haven't seen it in a while. And the fact that it did that with Shinsuke Nakamura and Gunther really showing out in this match and really being, who we've known them to be, but then not known them to be, it was almost like they locked right back into their NXT personas and had their level of strong style shown throughout the match. Like, you had Japanese strong style versus UK strong style. And when I tell you it was lit, it was lit. I loved it. And Gunther wound up retaining, but then I also felt weird because Ludwig was giving him the title back after the match was over, but he kept staring at it in a way that makes me feel like they might break up. And I don't know how to feel about that, but I wouldn't mind it either, because Gunther has been abusing Ludwig. And if they do break up and fight over the title, I won't be mad about it. But I almost want them to stay together, because they've basically broken up Imperium, and Imperium deserves, or at least a piece of Imperium deserves to still be together. And the way that Shinsuke was staring at Gunther, it's almost like they're not over either. So I guess we have to wait and see. And of course, I love Karrion Kross being there. Karrion Kross and Scarlett being back together and being on SmackDown is just right. And him challenging Roman Reigns is right too. It just is. And that's pretty much all I liked in wrestling this week. Like I said, if there's anything that you liked in wrestling this past week, feel free to share or comment on it as you see me posting clips of this episode. And now we're just going to go to the conclusion, and I got some announcements to make. Okay, so I was sitting with my friends one day and they asked me, Stephanie, how do you record your podcast? And I said, with the Anchor app on my phone. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. It is absolutely free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. And it will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's got everything you need to make a podcast in one place. They even have classes and stuff that you can listen to that will give you all kinds of good tips on what you need to do in order to make the best podcast. So if you want to do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm, or download the free Anchor app to get started. All right, so thank you for listening to the second episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast that I put out this weekend. If you haven't already, go back and listen to my other new episode, Pop Life, featuring Gerard Bonner, who is commentator for Southern Honor Wrestling and founder of Bonnerfied Radio. Please listen to that interview because it was a great interview. We talked about his journey as a radio host and how he was able to transition into wrestling commentary. And basically, we also talk about music as well and other things. So please listen to that as well as listening to this episode. So if you want to find the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, you can listen to the show on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and basically everywhere you get your shows. And you can also listen to full episodes and my interviews on my YouTube channel called The Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And if you look on the icon is of course the logo, which is a purple ring with HWP in the middle. So yeah, that's where you can find it. And also like, share, and subscribe anything you like to hear, or any clips that you like to that you might like, or if you hear something you might like, share it on Facebook. Like it on Facebook, or share it and just say, hey, this is the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. Give it a listen. And also, if you like what you hear on Apple Podcasts, rate it, give me 5 stars, leave a comment and talk about, and leave a review and talk about how much you like it and all of the above, because that could seriously help the show and help it to continue. Or if not, that's okay too, because I'm gonna keep doing it, so it doesn't matter. But please do anyway. Please do it. So of course, next weekend I won't be releasing a new episode because I will be in New York again for the second annual Black Girl Magic event. This is an event showcasing the best in Black women in wrestling, with the likes of Karen Bam Bam and Trish Adora and Willow Nightingale and so many other Black female talent will be participating in it. And Katrina Blake, who I work with at Women's Wrestling Talk, will be ring announcing for the very first time there, and I will either be doing backstage interviewing or commentary. Either way, I'm happy to be a part of it, and I'm glad to be there. And also that weekend, that Saturday, there's going to be Jobber Slam 2 being presented by the Jobber Tears podcast and Battle Club Pro. And there's lots of cool matches on there. So if you're going to be in the Brooklyn area, there's lots of cool wrestling going on. So please come out and support them and support us and Black Girl Magic and everything that's going on with that. So a new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast won't be coming out next weekend because I will be working wrestling. So, but then I'll be able to talk about it on the next one. So yeah, I hope that you're staying safe and doing the very best that you can. And also not being too hard on yourself when you mess up at certain things, or if you're going through something, or if you have something that's sort of keeping you from operating on all cylinders. Like me, I'm having trouble sleeping, but I'm hoping that somehow or another you're powering through and getting your goals finished and reaching areas that you never thought that you would reach. And I hope you're being courageous about it. And even if you are afraid and doing it anyway, that's great too. And I also hope that you have peace and love surrounding you, because there's just been here again a lot of loss during the week. And I just hope that even in the midst of so much sadness and hopelessness, that you're still surrounding yourself with light and with peace and love, and taking care of your souls and not letting any negativity permeate your spirit or your mind, because at the end of the day, light is all you need to make it through. So with that in mind, I'll just leave you with that little nugget, and just know that negativity does not serve you. And anything that doesn't serve you, get it out of your life. And fill your life with the things that do serve you. So with that in mind, this is the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. And of course, the theme song is performed by Josiah Williams, aka Mr. Wrestle and Flow. And until next time, bye y'all. And women's wrestling matters. Just thought I'd put that out there too.